In 1999, a few people got together and made a movie with a very low budget of $60,000, thus creating not only the found footage genre, but it also made way for such undeniably inspired classics, such as Apollo 18, Atrocious, Megan is Missing, The Last Exorcism, both of them, The Devil Inside, Paranormal Activity, all 6 of them, The Gallows, As Above So Below, and countless others. If you deny that these aren't some of the best movies ever, then you are absolutely right. The found footage genre is home to some truly awful, cheap, and lazy movies for studios to abuse and make a quick buck out of. And unlike other great movies that have inspired many other filmmakers to do good, the Blair Witch Project is a movie that is to blame for creating the found footage genre and all of its cliches, such as dumb characters, lazy scares, running while shouting and shaking the camera, and ridiculous endings that make no sense. Now, I went into this movie with 2 mindsets. One was to watch it from the perspective of a viewer from the late 90s, and the other was to watch it as I would any other movie today. Did I enjoy it with either mindset? Well, let's start off with the story. So the story of the movie is that these 3 teenagers want to make a documentary, and they do so by going into the woods to investigate a myth called the Blair Witch. And once they arrive, they start hearing sounds that we, the audience, don't hear, see nothing, and idiotically get lost on the way, as it's obvious they did not prepare for a journey in the woods, let alone a supernatural entity as well. Alright, so let's get the good stuff out of the way. First off, this is one of the very few found footage movies that actually uses a crappy video camera, which results in some truly horrible looking footage, and that is great to see for once. Usually in the found footage genre, people record the footage in big budget movie quality, which makes absolutely no sense. Also, for a bunch of new actors, I think they did a great job. Their conversations felt real for the most part, and apparently there were quite a few occasions in the movie where the 2 directors of this film deliberately put the actors in predicaments without briefing them on it. They even didn't bring much food along either. As a result, the actors were legitimately creeped out and lost at times. I don't know if that's good directing or trolling, but let me know in the comments what you think. Also, in the interview scenes, there was some natural light humour sprinkled in. The one that stood out to me was the fisherman and his son. There were a good couple of contradictory jokes in there. And the scares. Now, one of the reasons this movie scared so much people back in the day was because of the ingenious marketing. The internet was just starting to become a thing, and all online videos looked terrible. Like, I'm talking worse than 144p on YouTube. And the marketing consisted of these really low quality clips being posted on the internet, and there were even posters and flyers being distributed saying that the actors of the movie were actually missing. This caused a lot of word of mouth, and that was the hook that would reel us in. And apparently it really worked, because the mother of the kids would actually get condolence letters from people. People who I can only assume feel like real suckers right now. On top of all that, the 3 actors of the movie also kind of disappeared too. Heather Donahue went into selling marijuana, and both Joshua Leonard and Michael Williams went on to star in movies that none of us would watch. So people's natural assumption was that maybe the Blair Witch really did kill them. What amplified it was that people could not even validate whether or not this was real because there weren't any good search engines like Google or Yahoo back in the time. So the marketing is a really important element and the best thing this movie has going for it. Once you take that all away, this is one hell of a cheap movie that does absolutely nothing to make the best of its shortcomings. Honestly, I don't know how there is a demographic of people who to this day say this is one of the scariest movies ever made, because in my eyes, it is one of the laziest films ever created for cinema. It has no tension, absolutely 0 scares, and 9 out of 10 times the actors constantly hear noises and see things that the directors didn't even bother to enlighten us with using sound effects. I wouldn't even call this low-budget filmmaking. Anyone can take a camera into the woods, shake it around, and pretend they heard something. There's literally no skill involved at all with the horror element in this movie. It also uses many cliches that I'm sure were new back at the time, but I'm pretty certain they were still undeniably bad back then. The running with the camera, screaming, "Oh my god, what the fuck is that?" Shots of our characters at night looking all scared and ready to die, only for the movie to suddenly cut to the next morning, and the absolutely disgraceful, nonsensical ending that makes the conclusions to all the Paranormal Activity movies look good. Yeah, I freaking went there. Now let's talk about our 3 oh-so-pathetic characters. They really got on my nerves. We have the tall one, who goes by the name of Josh. His name is the only one I remember because they hardly say it in the movie. Oh, silly me. I am lying out of my teeth.
Josh? Josh! 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 Josh!
We also have Backpack Guy, who I swear to God, I wanted him dead. Without the other two knowing, he does something so stupid and retarded which causes the guy and girl of the team to fight with each other and completely break down. And later on, when so much is said and done, he admits what he did and they all start to scream and fight. He basically kills all hope of the trio finding their way out of the woods that literally only a miracle could get them out. It became apparent to me at this point that I don't care if this was a fictional character or not. If someone is this dumb to do something like this, then he or she deserves to receive the worst possible outcome. Next up is the lady. Now her reasons for wanting to come to the woods was a plausible one, and she even had a good reason to bring her camera along. But as the movie goes on, she just starts to become a cliched, found footage female character who screams and shouts at the top of her lungs. It was warranted in some scenes, but in others it just became cliched and really grating. Especially at the end. I was actually rooting for the Blair Witch to kill her at that point. Also, I bet she did not even read a single page out of this book. She literally just took her friends into the woods completely unprepared and from the very beginning was in over her head. Useless. Speaking of useless, there was nothing visually frightening in this movie. Again, the actors did a good job playing their roles and their dialogue was convincing, but with absolutely no visuals to back it up, there was nothing for me to get scared of. I mean seriously, the Blair Witch is so damn lazy that she doesn't even show up. The excuse that many people give for this is, well, it's smart, it leaves it to your imagination, it's a thinking movie, and if you didn't get it, then you don't like to think. Well, that is a bullshit answer. I like when movies leave stuff to your imagination, but you need to give us some food for thought first. That's just how our minds work. For example, Insidious. Using basic camera zooms and panning, you know something is coming after this kid, and what it is, you don't know. But you see some abnormal red handprints amongst other things. Now we do eventually see the demon later, but until that point, the handprint is constantly on our mind, and we're left wondering what this monster looks like. Even older movies going decades ago understood this concept. This movie gives us nothing for over an hour. Eventually it gives us some sticks that are put together, which is meant to signify the Blair Witch, but anyone could have made them. There is nothing that indicates this was made by some sort of creature. For all we know, Douchey McJackass here decided to play a prank. It wouldn't be the first time he did something stupid to wind up the group. Having characters claim they heard something and have them shake the camera in the dark is not good enough. Now it turns out that the directors of this movie were actually going to do something more visual. There was a scene where they were actually supposed to pan the camera to the left and we would see the Blair Witch. But unbelievably, the lazy buggers did not even bother to reshoot that scene. So to us, the audience, she's just screaming at nothing like she does throughout the whole movie.
Oh my god, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
I mean, from a filmmaking point of view, that doesn't make any logical sense. If you spend the time to create a visual prop for your movie, why would you decide not to do a reshoot and this time make sure the camera picks it up? As I said, it comes off as completely lazy. And do you know what? If this movie was meant to be about a group of teens that whilst filming a documentary got lost in the woods, and we see the mental stress this is putting on them, then that would have been an interesting idea in itself. Adding the supernatural horror element only to then not include any horror really cheapened it for me, and not in a good way. Honestly, this movie should not have been called The Blair Witch Project. A more fitting title would have been The Money-Making Project, as the ones that were involved with the film really made a ton of money from this. Heck, they even decided to return the camera they filmed the movie with to further increase their profit. So overall, my final thoughts of this movie are very mixed. On one hand, I really despise this movie, and I would go as far as to say that it takes the spot as my #1 most overrated film of all time. And on the other hand, it's one of my most admired movies of all time, so it fits into a variety of different categories for me. But still, the movie was boring, and as someone who admires the art of filmmaking, it did not inspire me in the slightest. I would give it a 1, but the acting from these generally inexperienced actors should be commended, and for that I give it a 2 out of 10. Now, if you liked this movie because you saw it back in the day and it had an impact on you, then I can understand and respect that. But coming from someone who loves the art of filmmaking and constantly analyzes low-budget films, I felt like I got nothing from this. To me, it came across as completely phony, even when I was trying to accept it and appreciate it for its time. And that ending only made me think this was one of the biggest waste of time films I've ever seen. Now, 1 year later, there was a sequel released called Blair Witch 2: Book of Shadows, but I'm not even going to bother watching that one, as it is renowned for being one of the worst incoherent and studio-influenced movies ever. Even my local cinema refuses to acknowledge its existence. It has actually called the recent third movie of the franchise Blair Witch 2.
I think that says it all, don't you?
So, that ain't happening. And if you're wondering what my thoughts are on the recent Blair Witch 3, well, I haven't seen it yet. But usually I would say that there is no point making a sequel/remake to films like this, as the original is the best and no one can top it. Well, this is a movie that I think can and should be remade, but only if it is done right. If it ends up being another money-making project and a cash grab like practically every other modern horror movie out there, then you can just forget about it. And thus concludes this review. Do you agree or disagree with me? Sound off in the comments below. Also, if you want me to review more movies when they release in theaters, then feel free to donate to me via Patreon or PayPal. In doing so, you will also get early access to my movie reviews before they come on YouTube for everyone else to see. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and until the next time, take care.